my name is Larken Bunce, and I'm the co-director and co-founder of Vermont Center for Integrative Herbalism in Montpelier, Vermont. My work as an herbalist is really pretty multifaceted, and it has evolved over the 20 years that I've been working with plants and different types of healing modalities, body work as well. Right now, what VCIH is about is sort of a weaving of introductory family and home care based herbal medicine classes, and then moving all the way through to training clinical herbalists who are intending to make a career out of herbal medicine. So we have a 3-year program, and it's almost 1,500 hours at this point, and I teach about a third of that curriculum. So I'm teaching anywhere from 15 to 25 hours a week. I'm out in the gardens, I'm making medicine with folks, I'm wildcrafting, I'm teaching about pathophysiology, I'm teaching about herb-drug interactions, and I'm also teaching about rapport and sort of how to be a therapeutic presence, how to have a good, potential successful herbal business, supervising in the student clinic. So lots of different subjects have sort of woven their way into my world, because one of the best ways to continue to learn is to teach. So I always recommend that to anyone who is thinking about becoming an herbalist or really making herbalism their career, is to do at least a little bit of teaching. So that's a big part of what I do. The other thing that VCIH is about is a sliding scale community herbal clinic. And what we do there is, originally, we were a quote free clinic, and what that was about was just trying to be as accessible and sort of to really draw people's attention and awareness to the options that herbal medicine could offer. And what we realized over time was that a lot of people who didn't need a free clinic per se were feeling kind of like they didn't understand if they could engage with what we had to offer. And we also noticed that free sort of perhaps was associated with maybe a little less follow-up and a little less kind of, I don't use the word compliance, but enthusiasm on the part of the folks who are utilizing the services. We also weren't feeling sustainable in terms of the folks who were offering, the herbalists who were involved. We were feeling a little bit burnt out, and also didn't have all the herbs that we wanted, et cetera, et cetera. So VCIH really grew out of that original free clinic. And the directors currently and the co-founders are Betsy Bancroft and Guido Mazet, along with myself. And then we've since then brought on another director, Laura Litchfield. So the four of us are working together and sort of evolving the organization. We're in our 7th year. And at this point, we have a clinic which we call a sliding scale clinic. And it does not slide down to zero at this point. It's very inexpensive. A consultation can be $5. And we also have a time bank locally where people exchange time. And so we can engage in that and get things that we need as an organization, and people can give hours for time, or sort of for our time, which is fantastic. And then we do have a third option, which is gift. And we're choosing that language really particularly, one, because there's this work that's sort of arising out of sort of the slow living movement and out of some other movements around sort of the free economy and things like that. But the idea is that in receiving a gift, there's more value given to what you're receiving. And also it assumes that there's no sense of being beholden to the gifter, because a lot of people, even as we were doing sliding scale that went down to zero, were feeling like, how do you guys do this? And I feel guilty, and I don't want to keep getting my herbs because I'm supposed to even give $1 or something. So we're changing the language to be about the gift. And we're doing that also because gifts in general, culturally, have value. In fact, getting a gift is like the best, most celebratory, awesome thing that can happen sometimes. And so we really want to recognize the value of the plants and the value of what a clinician gives in time. And they're valuable in terms of the amount of effort and the fossil fuels and transportation and what the land has to give in order for the herbs to be grown. So there's value, so it's not free. And at the same time, we give it freely as a gift. And we're really excited about that kind of shift in not just being sliding scale, but also in valuing the fact that people can do something useful with their time, even if they don't have money, and also that sometimes people just need a gift and we're really excited to give it. So that's kind of an evolution that we have been shepherding over the past, it's actually, the free clinic started in 2001, and I wasn't involved with it until 2005, but shepherding it, for quite a long time. And we've seen actually a pretty nice uptick in people's sort of engagement with the sliding scale and in what we feel like is their understanding of how we are sustainable and how we feel about what we're doing and how we, kind of what we believe about the value of herbal medicine. So that's the clinic and the school. The other things that I do are to teach out in the world. There are a number of different herb schools that have me come and teach for their programs, usually clinically driven programs. I'll do weekends to certainly, it increases my income, but I also really like just hanging out with other herb students and other herb teachers. I also teach at conferences, which isn't really much of an income usually, but it's another way to just continue to weave with the community and to meet more folks and get a good sense of what else is out there. Because I think for me, it's really important and exciting, not just to see other ecosystems and meet other plants, but to kind of see the kind of herbalists that other places produce, in terms of culturally, but also in terms of the land. It's really exciting to me. So I do some traveling. And the last piece that's kind of the main source of income for me is to do some writing for pay. Over my career, I've done a fair amount of writing, sometimes more regularly, articles for pay. Now I do more, I have a blog that I hardly ever pay attention to, but I do write for other purposes. I've written as a consultant for different types of products and that kind of thing, but I really just enjoy writing to, again, kind of reach a different audience than the students that I'm with intensively for a year or 2 or 3, just to see, not to get too myopic and kind of in my own world of what I think is the way. And so when you put yourself out there, you get feedback, and that's really quite interesting too. And there's so many great folks writing about herbal medicine right now that it's fun to be part of that conversation. My work also involves a clinical practice. I see folks in between teaching classes and doing my administrative work for VCIH. We have a professional clinic, which is also offered on the sliding scale. And I wouldn't say I specialize, but the folks who I tend to end up seeing often are interested in working with sort of stress and mental health. I work with a lot of people who are looking to kind of have a different perspective in terms of how their life feels to them, kind of their perception of stress or their perception of fulfillment or satisfaction. And so there's a lot of that, but I also see everything from fertility issues to digestive whatnot and, everything in between. And I love doing that. It helps me to be a better teacher. I probably do that 5 to 10 hours a week, depending on the season and how much time I open up in our schedule. But, I have what I think would be a classic herbal practice, how most people would think about it. I sit in an office and I do my intake for an hour and a half or 2 hours, and I formulate and give people lots of, small formulas, and I use pretty substantial doses. And but I'm also really excited about the therapeutic relationship, and I'm really attentive to, as I mentioned, in terms of my teaching, I'm really attentive to the container and what happens between myself as practitioner and the client, and that's kind of my passion as well. And I think that's a little bit of why people who are kind of feeling I need to be held, I'm not satisfied, I need some relational something, tend to be sort of attracted to working with me, or they hear from their friends, you'll go and you'll get nice petting, it'll be lovely. So I invite the plants in to kind of carry that sense of containment and sort of relational attention sort of through between our appointments, and it's really fulfilling for me. So my background is really fairly diverse. I came to herbal medicine through a number of pathways in a really personal way. I think I was born into it in that my parents were the quintessential hippies. They were 18 in 1969, living in Haight-Ashbury, in San Francisco, moved up to the Redwoods on a little piece of logged land, and had me, literally in a shed, and I didn't have running water and electricity till I was 4. So both of them were really excited. We had Juliette de Barclay-Levy's books they were using to take care of the animals, and we had huge gardens, and it's Garberville, California, so there's a particular herb that's often grown. There's a lot of that, and just an incredibly connected, and not just in a I am spiritually connected, but I'm just naked, I'm not wearing any clothes, I'm like a little kid running around, there's no kids anywhere. And I knew I didn't meet children, really, that I was friends with until I was 4. I knew only adults, my parents, who I didn't know were mom and dad. I called them by their first names. And I hung out with plants and a horse and chickens and some cats. And that was it. And so I really got plants as friends and animals. These were my companions. I had some invisible friends too. I don't know if this is really helping the cause for people who want to come study with me, right? But it's really a beautiful, for me, I didn't think about it for a long time, but for me it's really the genesis of my relationship with the plants, is that I really understood and still understand them as sentient beings, as the world as an animated place with heart and with a realness that is maybe different than what other people experience. And it's a huge gift to me to have had that. And so through my childhood, my family are all gardeners and cooks, and I grew up a kind of basic hippie lifestyle, but also in terms of a real orientation towards healing. What I think my childhood and young adulthood really did for me is give me this foundation, sort of an orientation to life that was kind of ripe for influence by ideas about, health and healing and also social justice and environmental justice. And so my college education was really focused on things like permaculture and gender activism and environmental activism, art, but really from the moment that I started my college education, I was also looking at different kinds of holistic and alternative healthcare modalities. So I became a massage practitioner and a shiatsu practitioner. Early on, I studied herbs really since I was 15 or so through books, and then was able to take classes. I went to Goddard College, and when they still had an on-campus program, tiny little community of 100 hippies doing their crazy things with beautiful teachers, and really an incredible experience, a perfect college for me. And so I was able to study a lot of herbal medicine through that, and my undergraduate thesis is just all about sustainable health and really a lot about herbal medicine and food and body work. And during that time is when I trained in shiatsu and other bodywork styles. And then I decided I needed to just really go and start kind of hanging out with plants again. And so I did some herb farming. I worked with a friend with whom I ended up, we got certified organic right when the standards changed. So it was crazy for this tiny little plot, but we really wanted to sell herb seeds to our local herb seed company, which was tiny, and it's now High Mowing Organic Seeds, which is this national company. But we sold our Tulsi seeds and figured out how you do that organically, and it was great. And I went and studied with Deb Soul out in Maine, and I lived with her for a year and really did this beautiful opportunity that not too many people get. And I did apprenticeship with Matthew Wood and sort of got that really kind of one-on-one engagement. And that was sort of the first 10 or so years of my herbal world, was sort of me just being with the plants and then being with people one-on-one and getting a lot of that kind of apprentice or mentorship, and I was needing that after being in the academic world, even though Goddard's a weird academic environment. But at about year, 10, I sort of was like, I want to know what I don't know. And I think that, a change could be coming. Something could happen in my lifetime. And I was sure that, I was certainly going to be an herbalist. And I thought, well, there may be the need for some more deep scientific knowledge and education, because while I'm not necessarily in support of licensure, I would want to be able to continue to connect people to plants if that's what it came to. And so I had a feeling at that time that having a science education would help me do that. So I went to what's now Maryland University of Integrative Health, and it was Thai Sophia at the time, and I was in one of the first classes for the Master of Science in Herbal Medicine. And I really do feel like that gave me an incredible opportunity to then step into a lot of the work that I've done since, it's been 10 years since then. And it allowed me to become a faculty member at Goddard, actually, in their Health Arts and Sciences program in the master's and undergraduate level, and I did that for 7 years. And that was an incredible opportunity to really work with people around their dreams, around herbal medicine and food and body work, all the things I'm passionate about, and social justice, health justice. So those things, having that degree, an accredited degree, the only one in the country at the graduate level, really opened that door for me. And people call me all the time. I feel like sometimes I'm like the national guidance counselor to herbalists because people are like, you went to Thai Sophia, you taught at Goddard, you have an herb school, like, what should I do? What's the path for me, And I love it. I'm totally happy to guide people. But I think it's really all about what your goals are. And I think you can do anything you want. You do not need to have any stamp or certification by anyone. But there are doors that will open for you depending on, what piece of paper you have. And I essentially decided, though I felt totally authorized from, my childhood on to have this relationship with plants and to help connect people to plants, I also want the doors to be as open as possible for me to be able to not only work with other folks, but to help my students, and I can do that. I think in a way that works well for me, because I can step into the academy and step back out again, and I have a little bit of backing behind me. So I think if I were to give advice to anyone considering an herbal career or trying to figure out how to make a living with herbs, the thing that I tell my students is really just to find what it is that falls at the intersection between what you love and what you're passionate about, and also what you're good at. Because really, those are often not the same thing. And I notice in my own career, there's really a time when I was engaged in a lot of what I was really good at, which is especially writing and preparing, good classes, parsing words, but that oftentimes ends up looking like a lot of time at a computer. Also a lot of time sitting with clients, which is lovely. And I so enjoy sort of the product of preparing classes, which is to teach. I love to be with people. I love to work with students. Or the product of writing, engaging again with the public and kind of getting that feedback. But it's a lot of sitting inside. And so at some point I realized, like, wow, I really need to be back in the garden again. I need to be with the plants. I need to have time that's essentially scheduled in, that I'm forced to be outside, which I never in my wildest dreams would have imagined I needed to force myself as an herbalist to be outside. Because for me, that's sort of the deepest form of self-care. And I think, whatever that is for you, whatever your self-care is, if it's sleeping, eating, I think those are everybody's self-care, but maybe it's something that's a little harder for you to do. Those things are easy for me, but really making sure that I got myself outside, that I had time doing wildcrafting or gardening or being in the dirt. I was surprised really at how I woke up one day and realized that, as an herbalist who is making money and sort of living the dream, somehow that piece was missing, the obvious piece, which was really tangible, direct connection with live plants and really just with the earth. And so I created a class which involved bringing people together to do an apprenticeship in my gardens, and that's been really successful. And even as sometimes I think like, oh, I'm weeding, why, I could be doing something so much more productive. It's actually incredibly productive for me because it grounds me, you know, in those basic sort of human-animal kinds of ways that that happen when we're outside. But it also just brings me back to, again, that intersection of really what am I good at, but yet also what am I passionate about, what feeds me, and making sure that those things are in alignment is kind of the most important thing, I'd say, for my success, what I've seen in terms of not just how well I get myself out into the world or how many students we get or whatever it is, but really in terms of me feeling satisfied and fulfilled. That's kind of what it's been about, is noticing the places where, or the moments, or hopefully longer stretches of time where I'm you know, I'm feeling successful in a more whole way, in a way that's about kind of my experience and not just kind of what's happening in the bank or how, you know, whatever that's quantitative, whether you're writing in students or whatever it is. So I would really invite anyone who's considering herbal medicine as a career to think not so much about whether you're good at sort of the usual business skills. If you're worried that you don't have a head for that, you can always find people to help you. You can surround yourself with people who are great at that. We have a whole culture built by people who are great at that. And what the culture needs is people like us who actually are great at connecting with the plants, who are great at being with the earth and kind of finding some way to bring some piece of that to others. And so find the way that you are great at that and that you love doing, and find a way to make a living out of that.